We have 18 players that you guys who are 2-3, 1-4, 0-5 in your fantasy football leagues are probably panicking on. So we're here to give you guys our panic meter, 1 to 10. Are we panicking? Are we buying? Are we here to talk you down off the ledge? Let's get it kicked off, Danny, with a nomination of your own, because you and I are not quite on the same page on this one. But Saquon Barkley, should managers be panicked?
Yeah, so I put this on myself, like you said. I have Saquon Barkley in my home league, and I am starting to worry a little bit in relation to the expectation that he was a top 6 fantasy pick in your draft, and you're expecting him to be a 19, 20 plus point per game scorer. I genuinely think the 16 to 18 range is probably where we end up seeing Saquon Barkley lie, because with Saquon Barkley, I'll talk about his injury in a second. People might be wondering, okay, what exactly is going on with the knee? The reason why I'm concerned, and I'd be at about a 4 or a 5 out of 10 for Saquon Barkley, is that I simply see regression in the Eagles' ground game as a whole. I do think that the overall uptick in receiving usage could kind of even it out, but this Eagles offensive line is not what it was in 2024. With Landon Dickerson, he's been dealing with his own injuries. With Cam Jurgens, he got back offseason back surgery as well. I just simply don't think the overall ground game of the Eagles is going to mimic what we saw in 2024. Now, I don't think it's all lost for Barkley. I think the uptick in receiving usage could save, an 18 point per game year, but I think he's destined to more so be a mid to back end running back one rather than the high end running back one we drafted him to be. I think overall, if I were to put an expectation on what I'd expect for Saquon this year, I'd probably say the RB4 to RB8 range is where I lie. It's just if you drafted him 3rd overall, 4th overall, 5th overall, you're kind of expecting him to be in that top 3.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm worried as far as can he do what he did last year? Because I didn't actually have that expectation coming into the season, which is why I'm not really changing my stance on Saquon Barkley. And I still think relatively he's a good buy low because he's averaging 16 points per game, RB9. I think he will finish better than that in both respects. I think 18 to 20 points per game is probably about what we're getting. And I do think it's been a string of bad matchups. The Rams, Bucks, some of these teams have been a little bit harder to run the football against. I think last week, for whatever reason, they were just so dead set on getting Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown targets to shut them up that they completely abandoned the run game, and they should get back to it at some point. But the one thing I will say that does have me a little worried, and I would have said I was like a 1 out of 10 coming into this, and I'd say I'm probably about a 2 or 3 out of 10. Yeah. Barkley himself is averaging 3.2 yards per carry and is currently the 5th lowest graded running back in the NFL. Only a couple other guys, including Derrick Henry, actually have been worse than him as far as just an overall PFF grade standpoint. So he needs to play better. Like you said, Cam Jurgens, Landon Dickerson banged up. I know Lane Johnson was banged up at one point as well. The offensive line is currently 17th in run blocking. So there's some worry and overall concern around the Eagles as a team, the Eagles as an offense, and specifically, like you said, the ground game with Saquon Barkley. So I'll say I'm a little bit panicked, but I still lean towards on the side of buying low on him.
Yeah, which is reasonable. I think partially too. If you're like me and you are panicked on him, again, it does sound like he's going to be good to go on Thursday. Again, it's kind of worrying that he had that DNP, that he had that limited practice, that now we're hearing knee soreness coming out of Sunday. But like you said, it's still a great matchup. Obviously, we know with the New York Giants, they struggle against gap scheme runners. And as we know with Saquon Barkley, one of the best between the tackles runners in the league when he's on his game. So we'll see. Hopefully this is the week that we see the efficiency come back, because otherwise I will be more so a 7 or 8. If the Eagles offensive line is unable to get push against the Giants, I will be full-fledged panicking.
Yeah, I think that's fair because they're a really bad run defense, and this is his former team, and he's obviously going to be up for this game. I just tend to think we're getting 150 and a touch out of Saquon Barkley in this game. That's why I think I'm not really panicked, is that I expect it to correct itself this week because, Broncos defense played a lot better than they had played to that point in the season, especially in the second half. They really shut him down. Buccaneers played really well against the run against Barkley, and then the Rams defense played really well in the 3 weeks prior. So I'm a little bit less worried, but I do think it's worth bringing up the topic because people who drafted him over Bijan or over some of these other guys are probably annoyed. And I think if that's what you did, then that ship has probably sailed. I do lean towards on the side. We're going to look up he's RB5, RB6 or whatever on the season. And for that reason, I guess you'd be 10 out of 10 panic that he doesn't do what he does last year. But coming into the season, I didn't expect him to have 22 points per game.
And I agree with that. I just think more so, even if we didn't expect 22, you kind of expected that 18 to 20 point per game range. And I would say that would be a win based off what he showed so far.
That's where I'm at with
there. Which again, he'd probably have to be about a 20 to 21 point per game type of score to get back to that. Moving forward, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Speaking of elite running backs from last year, Derrick Henry, like I mentioned, Saquon Barkley is currently PFF's 54th graded running back. Derrick Henry is 56. The only one that's been worse has been Braylon Allen and Ramondre Stevenson in PFF grade. And a large part of both of Allen and Stevenson's and Henry's, for what it's worth too, has been their terrible grades of holding on to the football because they've been fumbling the ball like crazy. So Derrick Henry, should people be worried? Because he is still averaging 5 yards per carry. The Baltimore Ravens will eventually get Lamar Jackson back from injury, whether it's after the bye or he does, gut through and play in week 6 against the Rams. Panic level on Derrick Henry is where for you?
I mean, based off new expectations with Lamar out, or
based off of the expectations most people had when they drafted him?
When they drafted him, 8 or 9. I don't think we're going to see 2024 Derrick Henry because I don't think the Baltimore defense is going to let him get that type of usage. And B, I don't think Derrick Henry himself is playing up to that par. On top of that, Ravens offensive line hasn't been generating the type of push we saw last year. Obviously, with Lamar out, you don't have the gravity of a rushing quarterback. If your expectation is that, oh yeah, Derrick Henry, he can be a top 6 running back going forward, like I would say 9, maybe even 10 out of 10. I don't think he gets back up to that level. If the expectation is, oh, can he get back to being a low-end running back 1? I think he can get there. It's hard not to be panicked, man. He's not going to play on third downs. He's not going to play on long down and distance. You're looking at about a 50% snap share back. And if he's not getting the advantage of a 14, 17-point Ravens lead type of game script, what exactly do you have with him?
Yeah, I would say from this point forward, or from, let's say, week 8 forward, when Lamar Jackson is back on the field, the Ravens haven't had their bye week, I would set his over-under of where he finishes from week 8 onward at RB 7.5. Because I actually really believe in Derrick Henry to have a great back half of the season. We talked about it in yesterday's video, why I think Zay Flowers, why I think Lamar Jackson are really good buys at this point. And a lot of it is because of their schedule. They have a bunch of really easy matchups. They're going to have to win like 8 of their last 10 games to even have a hope of making the playoffs. I just think that the Ravens are going to put up a lot of points on a lot of people. And even though Derrick Henry, I would say, doesn't look as good as he did last year, definitely doesn't look as good as he did last year, he's still going to break off those long runs. He's still going to be great in the red zone. Although we have seen a little bit more of a lenience of the Ravens offense to throw the football as opposed to just hand the ball to Derrick Henry every single play. So again, adjusted expectations, I'm at like a 3 or a 4. Overall expectations coming into the season, you said 8 or a 9. I'm probably like a 6 or a 7. I still do think he has a chance to get back up to every week starter, elite RB1 caliber status from week 8 onward, given the schedule and given the game scripts I think he'll be in.
I just personally more so view him in like the Kyron Williams, the Quinshon Judkins type of area. Like, got in my head right now, if I had to project rest of the season, who I think is going to score more fantasy points and get it out of the way, call me biased, I would take Javonte Williams to score more fantasy points than Derrick Henry the rest of the season. That's how
I don't think that is an outrageous take whatsoever, to be honest with you. I think you're probably valid in saying that. I have Derrick Henry as my RB11 rest of the season, and I actually have Javonte Williams one spot ahead of him. So I'm on the same page as you there, but as far as like Judkins and Kyron, I would still, if that's the price tag for Derrick Henry, I would be buying Derrick Henry actively at that point in time, because I still actually do have him within a tier of like the Achans, the Genties, the Jacobs of the world. He's just at the end of that tier for me, because I do think, like I said, week 8 onward, we could be talking about a guy that is a 18 plus point per game type of score given the game environments, and hopefully himself playing a lot better. Because that's the question that I have to ask myself is Derrick Henry washed? Is he cooked? Is he lost a step? And I don't think that's true.
He might be, dude, because I was looking at the rushing success rates as well. Like, he's generated a couple explosives, but he's not looking like the guy that we saw last year. And I think that's the big part of it. Similar to Saquon Barkley, why I'm a little bit more hesitant, why I'm a little bit more worried on both these veterans.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess I'm a little bit more bullish on these two. One guy that I am a little bit more scared of is Alvin Kamara right now, because Alvin Kamara, first off, Kendre Miller in 5 straight games, his snap share has increased. So Kamara last year was a guy who was getting peppered targets, huge workload, just a pure volume play, honestly. But Alvin Kamara this year has just 21 targets, 17 catches, 0.55 yards per out run. So he's not even really getting it done as a receiver. It's not like he's just getting fed 7-8 targets a game like we saw at points last season. And also Alvin Kamara himself is 3.9 yards a carry, 65.7 PFF grade, 2.75 yards after contact per attempt. He's not playing well. Kendrick's a bigger part of the backfield. I think the only hope that you would have if you have Alvin Kamara is that he gets dealt, honestly. I think if you have Alvin Kamara, he's a back-end RB2 as long as he's on the Saints. But I would rank him a little
Nice.
higher than that in rest of season rankings because if he gets dealt, he'll probably be better.
So funny enough about that, I view him as an RB3 if he's going to remain a Saint. Like that's really what I know. He's RB24 right now, but his best weeks actually came in weeks 1 and 2, and ever since then, like you said, his workload has gone down. That's kind of how I view him with the New Orleans Saints. And on top of that, as we know with the New Orleans situation, not really one that you lean on as 2024 Baltimore or 2024 Philadelphia. Let's just say you're looking on the exact opposite end of the spectrum with what we say from the offensive insulation. But like you said, there is still the upside. Like, what if he got dealt to Chicago tomorrow? What if he got dealt to the Chiefs tomorrow? It's like you have to bake in some of that implied upside and keep him in the low end running back 2 range. But if he is a Saint for the rest of the season, like I think he's destined for an RB31 type of point per game finish.
Yeah, this would be a major downgrade from what you thought you were getting because really, like Alvin Kamara has been one of the better values in fantasy the last 3 seasons because people like you and I who are nerds and want to see old running backs fall off have expected him to, and he hasn't really up until now where he kind of does look his age a little bit and the offense isn't force feeding him receiving targets. In fact, they're doing that to Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and Juwan Johnson. So Kamara, I would be, if I put it out of 10, where you drafted Kamara, what your kind of your upside you were baking in when you drafted him, I'd say it's probably about an 8 or a 9. I think you're probably looking at Kamara in the same realm of the likes of David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Warren, J.K. Dobbins type of guys rest of the season, as opposed to you thought, I would imagine, that you were getting a guy who was going to compete shot for shot with Kenneth Walkers and Travis Etienne's and Breece Halls.
Yeah, which is saying a lot more negative about Kamara than positive about those other guys in that range right now, which is hilarious.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So Kamara, I would be worried about. If you guys have Kamara, I'm not buying low on him. Let me just put it that way. Like if he gets dealt, you got lucky, in my opinion. Like if you're buying low on Kamara thinking that he might get dealt, it's kind of baked into his price right now to the point that I wouldn't buy low on him because you're still going to pay mid RB2 price tags because he could get dealt.
Yeah, I agree that it would be the only saving grace. And let's just paint the picture for those at home. So let's say if he remains a Saint, if we knew that foresight right now, he'd probably be what, like RB 28 to 31 in your rest of season rankings, give or take?
He's 22 for me right now, and I would say Henderson, Montgomery, Warren, J.K. Dobbins, and Swift would probably move ahead of him. So yeah, he'd be RB 27 for me if that happened.
And if you had the news tomorrow, he got traded to Chicago or KC, he'd probably be closer to that 15-18 range.
Yeah, I'd probably put him like 17 ahead of Kenneth Walker, right behind Amari and Hampton, depending on team situation.
So that kind of goes to show you, if we're talking about just the ability of the player as a New Orleans Saint, 8 or 9 in terms of our panic level. If you're baking in the potential bailout that's a trade, maybe we're at what, a 4 to 6 range?
Yeah, I'd say about a comfortable 6 is where I would be at with him.
Yep. No, I don't think that's wrong whatsoever. We can go on to your Tampa Bay Buccaneer next, Ed. I would say the majority of people understand that he's here not because of his level of play, but more so the extent of his injury with Bucky Irving.
Yeah, with Irving and Chuba Hubbard, because we're going to talk about both of these guys here. I think it's just worth noting what their injuries are, how long we expect them to be out, because people are panicked for that reason. It's not that anybody's really panicked about their play. Running back 9 in points per game, 18 fantasy points per game. Like Bucky Irving has been as good as advertised, really, and honestly could only get better as long as the season goes on with Tristan Wirfs back and Mike Evans coming back soon and that kind of thing. Here's some docs notes from fantasy Twitter doctors, because we're not doctors. We have no real idea what these injuries are. He is expected to miss week 6. According to Adam Schefter and a lot of these doctors, they think he's going to miss this game against San Francisco. Shoulder subluxation is the major issue. The mid-foot sprain doesn't sound like a major issue for most fantasy doctors. What a subluxation is, I'm paraphrasing from what they said, it's a version of a dislocation that is milder. So it's not as severe as the thing that Xavier Worthy suffered. However, when you're a running back versus a wide receiver, you need your shoulder more. You need to be able to lower your shoulder and break contact. And that could be a lingering issue that could result in him being on the injury report each and every week with the shoulder injury, maybe re-aggravating it. Basically, how Dr. Morse described it is if you look 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock on your shoulder, most people get subluxations between 12 and 3 o'clock. So kind of pushing their shoulder forward. And he said he probably has a 1 to 2 hour worth of dislocation, whereas Worthy would have had like a 3 to 4 hour worth of dislocation on his shoulder. So if he takes a bad hit, gets driven into the ground, he's a smaller back too. That would be what I would be worried about with Bucky Irving. So I'm not buying low for that reason, but I'm also probably just holding and hoping for the best.
So I'm curious, when he went through the analysis, did he mention anything in relation to clavicle risk? Like
He
obviously
said
because the shoulder
labral
is
risk
injured?
is a thing if he takes a bad hit. He basically said that what will probably happen is that it'll be lingering all season, and he'll get either surgery or stem cells put into it after the season is over. You kind of just need to hope and pray that nobody drives his shoulder into the turf on a tackle, basically.
Which, I mean, if you're a running back, that's not something you want to be concerned
No.
about. Let me ask you, because obviously he was the RB9 in points per game, 18 points per game when he was healthy. We feel confident that if he was to be fully healthy, he would be the lead back for Tampa Bay. But when you bake in the risk, where do you have him rest the season? Because he was a hard one to kind of really nail down as to where I value him.
I have him as my RB15 rest of season, baking in the risk. If I knew he was healthy, he would be my RB7 rest of season. But I don't know. He also has a midfoot problem too, which it doesn't sound like it's overly concerning, but it's enough that he was in a walking boot and he could re-aggravate that as well. So the fact that he's dealing with two injuries as well is not something that I feel great about. I'm not saying panic meter, sell this guy, but I'm like at a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, like I would probably even be a bit higher because you mentioned RB15 for you. He's my RB13, but again, I'm assuming a couple of the differences. Maybe you have Brees Hall or ETN above him.
I have Brees, Kyron Williams ahead of him.
Okay. I also have Kyron ahead of him, but so RB13 is where I have him, RB15 for you. And he was being drafted, RB6, RB7, or RB8. Based off that alone, I think we got to be at about least a 7.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. But again, it's really all about like rest and stuff.
Yeah.
The shoulder subluxation said he can heal it. It's not something that he needs surgery on as long as he's, sitting out for the proper amount of time. And Rachaad White obviously did a really good job in relief of him. I think they would be smart to hold him out as long as he possibly needs for both of those injuries to fully heal.
No doubt. Another injured player here with Chuba Hubbard, RB18 with 14 PPR points per game when he's been healthy. We saw how Rico Dowdle played in relief for him this past week. What are some of the buzz right now, or what is some of the buzz in regards to the Chuba Hubbard injury?
Yeah, so generally it's about a 2 to 3 week injury, and usually running backs are back up to their full workload after 2 games, give or take. And knowing that he was limited 2 weeks ago, obviously missed last week, and is probably going to miss, if I had to guess, week 6, I would say he'll probably be good to go after that. So I actually lean towards maybe buying low on Chuba Hubbard because I think especially after this week, he'd be a better buy low because if Rico has another good game, people are probably going to think that Rico's taken over this backfield or Rico's going to take a large share of this backfield. Let's say Rico Dowdle has another 15 plus point per game performance. What level out of 10 would you be worried that Rico is going to take a significant piece away from Chuba Hubbard? Because based on his contract, his Pro Bowl season last year, I'm not really that worried about Chuba Hubbard losing that many touches. Will Rico get 30 to 40% of the snaps like he was before? For sure. But how worried are you if Rico has another great game that he would take significant touches away?
Well, I will counter with part of that. Yeah, Chuba Hubbard Pro Bowl caliber season last year. I mean, Rico Dowdle had 1,000 rushing yards as well. So it's not like you're talking about a complete scrub and relief. In terms of do I think Rico Dowdle is going to wrestle the starting job from Chuba Hubbard? That risk level would probably be more so at a 0, 1, maybe 2 if you're completely worried. My risk level in terms of him taking maybe 30 to 35% of the work for a running back that's dependent
Well, he was
on
doing
his
that
workload.
before.
Well, okay. So basically what I'm pointing to, though, is that with Chuba Hubbard, we saw him kind of get bailed out with a couple, fourth quarter touchdowns, big time blowout spots. We see him get over the line. My question is, how sustainable is that, especially if Rico is going to more so be at that 40 to 45% range? Because, I mean, naturally speaking, if Rico is going to continue to play well, if he's going to be, 5 yards per carry again this week, he should get about a 10 to 15% workload bump.
Yeah, if he bumps up to a 10 to 15% workload bump would be close to a 50-50 timeshare between these two guys because he was getting about 30% of the touches and the snaps before.
I think he's merited it.
Yeah, I think he has too. So if that happens, like I would say a healthy Chuba Hubbard is a mid RB2. He's like right in that Kenneth Walker, a little bit behind that maybe, but right in that Kenneth Walker territory for me, like RB 18 to 20. If he loses 10 to 15% of the workload, then he's probably more a back end RB2. So for me, I would say that is less of a concern in my opinion than it is for you by the sounds of it, because I do think there's a pretty large talent discrepancy between Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, even if I think Rico Dowdle is an underrated back. I think Chuba Hubbard's just much better than him. So for me, I would say I'm at about a 3 to 4 out of 10 as far as my panic meter overall on Chuba Hubbard. And if I'm anywhere below a 5, I would say that's me leaning towards buying low on a player.
Yeah, and so I'm RB23 rest of the season is where I have Chuba Hubbard ranked right now. And if he gets his full workload, it'll probably be like I have Hampton at 18, Krosky Merritt at 19, Henderson 20, Scattaboo, Kamara right ahead of him. He'd probably be at the top, if not the second or third name in that tier. So probably RB 18, 19, 20 for me.
He's at 19 for
But
me,
if we
so that
do,
kind of adds up with everything there.
and if he does see, a workload decline, maybe Rico Dowdle does get that 10 to 15% extra, like we said. He'd probably be closer. Like, I think at that point, you'd have to take like J.K. Dobbins over him.
Well, it depends what Dobbins keeps doing. I would say, you'd probably have to in the short term, but we still have the Harvey risk, and we'll talk about Harvey in a second for Dobbins. But as of now, I would say he's a slight buy low, but I wouldn't be like going crazy buying low on him.
Yeah. No, I think that's a reasonable take. Like I said, RB23 for me right now at the back end of that tier. The tier right after him, I have like Jalen Warren, Chase Brown, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, Rashad White types.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the guys we've talked about already in previous versions of this video, because I don't want to go completely into like everybody that we've talked about already, but there is 2 rookie running backs that we talked about a couple of weeks back where we were panicked on the rookies in general. And I'm probably imagining most people who have Treveyon Henderson and RJ Harvey are still panicked to some degree. So without rehashing the whole discussion on Treveyon Henderson that, hey, Stevenson's fumbling, Antonio Gibson's now out for the season with an ACL injury, let's assume not rational coaching, because I don't think we can assume rational coaching in New England right now when it comes to this backfield. What does Treveyon Henderson actually end up being when we look back at the end of this season? What did Treveyon Henderson score points per game wise? And was he an every week starter? Was he a flex play? Did he ever have a stranglehold on this backfield? Or is it simply he is going to need a Ramondre Stevenson injury to be able to be a workhorse?
It's one that you don't have a concrete answer for, because I mean, rational coaching would have had this guy as the lead back about 4 weeks ago. The issue is we haven't seen rational coaching, and we have Mike Vrabel making quotes. Oh, Ramondre, we got to live through the fumbles. He's a focal point of it. Come on, Mike, be fucking serious for 1 second. What does Ramondre Stevenson actually do for your offense, genuinely, other than put the ball on the ground?
I guess he's a bruiser who can wear down. He played linebacker, so he wears down the defense and stuff. And like, for what it's worth, it's not like Treveyon Henderson's been this poster child for elite running back play either. He's missed some gaps. He's had some negative plays. The Patriots offensive line, pretty much outside of Will Campbell, has been difficult to run against. I saw somebody put out a chart that like, unless they're running off left tackle, it's like a terrible run play pretty much. Treveyon Henderson, though, did just see one of the pieces of this backfield go down for the rest of the season with an ACL injury, and his biggest piece of the backfield probably for route participation, 53% of the routes and 48% overall snap share.
Which, by the way, I will add context. I saw a couple people mention it in the comments of our trade targets video, and I think I know what you're talking about. Was it the trade targets video that it was on?
Yeah, no, it was in our skyrocketing. You said skyrocketing, crying on the sideline.
Yeah, which I'm sorry, that might sound insensitive with now the knowledge that he tore his ACL. I'll be honest, when I said that, I just saw him on the sideline crying. I didn't actually know the context. I didn't see him get carted off. I didn't see anything in that regard. So when we recorded that and I found out later in the day, it's like, oh, he tore his ACL. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have talked about him crying on the sideline. Again, apologies if you guys took any offense to that. But yeah, not to beat a dead horse, but clearly if I knew he tore his ACL, I wouldn't talk about him crying on the sideline.
Yeah. And again, to Henderson, are we ever going to see, without Stevenson going down, a 20-touch workload from this guy? And my answer to it's no. I don't think we're going to. I think he is going to be a 10 to 15-touch guy, 50-50-ish type of snaps all season long. And best case scenario, you're looking at what rookie year Christian McCaffrey looked like at the end of his rookie season, where him and Jonathan Stewart were splitting the workload, and he ended up finishing pretty highly in fantasy. But that required A, the Panthers to be a pretty good offense that year, and B, Christian McCaffrey was much better than Treveyon Henderson has been so far. So if Henderson figures things out and the light bulb clicks for him, maybe the old school coaching staff gives him the workload, but I'm getting less and less confident in that going forward.
2020. Okay. So we're in week 5 right now?
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift as a rookie had 20 total opportunities in his first 4 games.
Yeah. I think that's a reasonable comp for. I mean, Henderson's comp for me was Swift coming out of school.
The reason why I mentioned that is because he had 20 total opportunities in 4 games, and he ended up finishing the season as the RB18 in fantasy and only 13 games played.
Okay, so if you believe that to be true, by all means, I'm at a 7 or an 8 out of 10 that actually happens. Like, I actually think that this is not just the rookie does better in the second half, because generally that's a good rule to follow. Rookie post-bye, rookie bump, rookie in the second half of the year. I'm worried this might be an exception to the rule where Vrabel does want to use him in a committee the entire season.
Which it could, and it could very well be until it isn't. Like straight up, there might be a point in season where he realizes, shit, we are not moving the ball on offense. I need to make a change here. And again, maybe that's copium. Maybe we'll have, Arthur in the comments, take clock, all you want. I understand that. But you have to bake in implied upside for some of these rookies. So I would be, again, I'm acknowledging it, probably be at about a 5 out of 10 myself. But I do think rational coaching at some point will be in play. It's just unfortunately, I thought that would happen probably in the first 4 to 5 games. It's probably going to be, if it does happen, more so in that week 10, week 11 range.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of the biggest, frustrating, pull your eyes out committees, and we can kind of loop this right into RJ Harvey as well. The reason for it is because the other back is good enough to command a role. Like, think about the Seahawks right now with Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. People want, and yourself included, Kenneth Walker to take over a larger part of the better back workload. But Charbonnet has a role. Stevenson has a role. J.K. Dobbins has a role, and Dobbins actually just playing really well to the point that he shouldn't lose the workload. So there's a lot going on in these backfields. Something to remember for offseason analysis time is if the other back is good and also does things differently than the other guy that we want to win the job, it's much easier for Amari and Hampton to win the job when he's the best guy on the team at all 3 phases of playing running back. You know what I mean?
Sure, but I will say coming into the year that people could have argued Najee Harris versus Ramondre Stevenson was a similar.
Well, yeah, and Najee fucking tore his Achilles, so it's also hard to tell what would have happened the rest of the year. But I don't know. My thought process on Harvey, because we can just talk about him here too, is I don't think he's going to win the job over J.K. Dobbins until he looks objectively better than J.K. Dobbins for about 2 to 3 games in a row, which has not happened once this season.
It hasn't happened once. We got J.K. Dobbins averaging almost 5.3 yards per carry. We have a report from 2 hours ago from Sean Payton talking about how fantastic J.K. Dobbins looks.
Who would have known, man? J.K. Dobbins has been good this whole time.
You're getting that quote from Sean Payton, who, objectively speaking, we've seen in the past has relied upon, these veteran type of players. The only time we've seen him actually turn the reins over was Alvin Kamara, which Alvin Kamara kind of forcefully did it because he realized
he was a beast.
Mark Ingram, Adrian Peterson, they don't have enough juice. J.K. Dobbins, yeah, sure, he's got his knee injuries, he's got his Achilles tear, but realistically, I mean, you can't say he doesn't have juice. It is hilarious how much juice he still has despite the injuries.
I'm certain that J.K. Dobbins would have multiple RB1 seasons under his belt had he never tore his ACL or torn his Achilles in his career. I think he was that good of a prospect, that good of an athlete. So my answer for how does RJ Harvey hit for the rest of the year is rookie year Kenneth Walker's the only way it happens. Rashad Penny went down with an injury, who was an injury-prone running back. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins is as well. The only way Kenneth Walker was a league winner that year was because Rashad Penny went down with an injury. And I think that would be the only way RJ Harvey wins people leagues as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And obviously, if that was the implied scenario, I mean, RJ Harvey with this run offense, obviously the way the offensive line's playing, Sean Payne's scheme, he would be a clear top 12 to 15 running back in that scenario. But we can move on. Wide receivers, I think we pretty much covered everything at running back. If you guys have any other players you're panicking on at running back, feel free to comment them down below. We'll maybe try to give you a reply in the YouTube section. A wide receiver, the number one name, I would say, in terms of who was going the highest versus who's been a relative disappointment based off where we drafted him. I will own up to this. I mean, Nico Collins, he's the wide receiver 19 in PPR points per game. Obviously, one of my guys, only 14 PPR points per game so far. In 2 of 5 games, he's only crossed 20% of the targets. I will start off by saying I'm at about a 2. The reason why I'm at a 2 is because the offense for the Texans is going to show to be volatile. But I will argue back in terms of the overall target share in that the last 2 games for the Texans just simply haven't been competitive.
Yeah, and it's funny because I started to come around on Nico at the end of the offseason, but the very concern I had for Nico is exactly what's playing itself out, which is that the Texans offense is volatile because they can't protect CJ Stroud. And they can't protect CJ Stroud and get the number one receiver who primarily works down the field, the football, because they don't really have any other way of moving the ball consistently, whether it's another complementary receiver, a tight end, or a run game. And the run game specifically hasn't been good at all. And even last week, we thought, okay, it's going to be Woody Marks. He's going to take over the backfield. I mean, they still use Nick Chubb at a pretty high level as well. And even though they beat the living daylights out of the Ravens in that game, we didn't see a whole lot of offensive production from the fantasy scores. And we also saw some of these other ancillary receivers taking away targets, taking away high value touches from Nico. So I'm just worried that this is a guy that's going to be a high-end wide receiver too, and is masquerading himself because of where he was drafted as much better than that.
See, I still think he's a top 5 to 7 level talent, and the game scripts have influenced the last 2 weeks. On top of that, I mean, we saw him play 57% of the snaps last week. They went out there and absolutely dominated the Ravens. Like, how many times are we going to see 57% of the snaps? On top of that, he scored. Like, I'm just not worried. Like, am I worried he's going to get top 3 overall, 20 points per game? Yes, but I still figure him to be a mid-range to back-end wide receiver 1 at worst.
Okay, so the very pushback that you just had on Collins, I had on AJ Brown. So AJ Brown to me is a top 5 to 7 talent at the wide receiver position as well, but he is probably a high-end wide receiver 2 at best for fantasy right now, given his surrounding situation. That's kind of how I feel about Collins also.
The difference is Nico's actually playing well in his targets. AJ Brown has been abysmal. That's the difference.
So Nico's playing well, but he's not playing like as good as we thought he was going to play coming into the season. Like, because coming into the year, your argument to me, anytime I push back on Nico, was like, other than Chase, Lamb, and Jefferson, this might be the 4th best receiver in the league. Right. And, you know, I was very much, I think Puka's just as good as him. I think Amon-Ra's just as good as him. I think Drake London's just as good as him. Neighbors just as good as him. Yep. And he's not playing like outstanding. He's playing fine.
And again, part of it has been just the volume. Like, we do need to see more volume. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. 7.2 targets per game just simply won't suffice for him to be a high-end wide receiver 1. But on a per target basis, I mean, yeah, it's not 10.16, which is just outrageous like he was at last year, but 8.67 yards per target, 14.2 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns in 5 games. Like, yeah, 14 points per game he needs to be better than. But I also think with the bye week, the team could just say, hey, listen, like, why are we only throwing this guy 7 times a game?
Over under wide receiver 11 in points per game at the end of the year for Nico Collins.
Is lower better or is higher better?
Lower is he's wide receiver 12 or worse.
Higher. I think he's going to be like wide receiver 8 to 10.
Okay, I would say that's about exactly what his ceiling is to me, as a mid to low end wide receiver 1. And I'm worried that given the Stroud of it all and the way that the offense is not moving the football on the ground and stuff, I think that he'd be more likely we look up and he's wide receiver 15 in points per game kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say that's more so like for me about the 30th percentile outcome. The thing with Stroud that has been encouraging is even though the volume hasn't been great these last 2 weeks, we have just seen him play better, period. Like in those 2 games, about 500 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. We do have the bye week coming out now. Like, there is the real possibility we start to see the return of CJ Stroud in this past game, which is why I'm less worried than you are.
Yeah, I would say my panic meter on Collins is about a 6 out of 10 based on what I thought of him coming into the season. It's probably about an 8 out of 10, but 6 out of 10 with my new expectations of like low end wide receiver 1 is what he hits.
Yeah, 2 or 3 for me, based on current expectation. If I were to say, the 3rd or 4th wide receiver, like I kind of had him coming into the year, definitely would be closer to the 7 or 8. I don't think he's going to be a high end wide receiver 1, but I do think he's going to be a mid to back end 1.
Okay, so let's get into, we have about 4 guys that are more like wide receiver 3s and flex plays, so we don't have to spend as much time on them. Let's just quickly go through Jameson Williams, DJ Moore, Jakobi Meyers, and Jerry Jeudy. Out of 10, you are panicked on Jameson Williams, wide receiver 49, 7.9 points per game. How much?
This has to be a 10. Like, why wouldn't it be a 10 realistically? Amon-Ra St. Brown is dominating targets. Sam Laporta is really back. Jameer Gibbs is getting more targets than he did last year. David Montgomery's still involved in the offense. Like, Jameson Williams is what he is. He's a volatile deep threat. He's going to have big games. He's going to have a spike week, I'm sure, at some point this year where he has 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, but that's exactly what he is. What is he different than the other 30 wide receivers that profile fits?
Yeah, I mean, I was really up and down on JMO all offseason. By the end of the offseason, I really liked Jameson Williams, but early in the offseason, I was worried of how the Ben Johnson of it all would affect his receiving usage and his efficiency and stuff. The guy's averaging 4 targets per game. 4 targets per game is just not enough to get it done. Like, we're talking, that's like waiver wire caliber volume for Jameson Williams. As great as his offense is and as explosive as he can be, he's not playing as well as he did last year. He has a 15% target share on the season. And like you said, all of the valuable production right now is going to the guys that are playing well, that have been, really dominating the targets, specifically St. Brown, Laporta. We saw get on the board last week against the Bengals, and then the running backs do their thing for the last couple games.
So you want to know how absurd the Jameson Williams volume currently is? Okay.
How absurd is it?
Puka Nacua has 2 separate games of 15 targets. Jameson Williams has 21 in 5 games.
Yeah. Where's Jameson Williams in your rest of season wide receiver rankings, just out of curiosity? Because I have him outside of my top 40 wide receivers. And I'm curious, this is going to sound crazy to some people. Gun to my head, I would rather have Travis Hunter rest of season.
I had him at 36, and honestly, I'm convincing myself that was too high. What's the difference between him and Calvin Ridley? Genuinely, I think I would rather have Calvin Ridley.
Well, so here's the guys that I think he's very similar to Travis Hunter and Matthew Golden, only Travis Hunter and Matthew Golden are rookies, ergo they could get better as the second half of the season goes along, because all 3 of those players aren't getting the requisite volume that they probably need to get. But JMO's not playing at a super high level, and Travis Hunter and Golden, like I said, because they're rookies, could take another step forward.
JMO or DJ Moore rest of the season?
I mean, we'll talk about DJ Moore. We could just pivot right into him because DJ Moore is the next player that people are probably panicked on given where you drafted him. I mean, where you draft him, you have to be at a 10 out of 10 where you drafted him. You and I were not drafting DJ Moore. Let's get that perfectly clear. You and I were way off of DJ Moore because for the simple reason that we thought Rome Odunze and Colson Loveland, which hasn't really materialized yet, but Rome Odunze specifically has been the reason why DJ Moore has disappointed. Rome Odunze is clearly the wide receiver one on this team. It's not even particularly close. But on the 9.7 PPR points per game, wide receiver 51 performance that DJ Moore has, over under wide receiver 28 in points per game end of season for DJ Moore.
Dude, I was lower than that coming into the season. So based off what we've seen, nothing
36. Is he a top 36 wide receiver rest of season?
He's like my wide receiver 38 coming into the year, bro. I think we got to set the line at like wide receiver 45.
Okay, so we are clearly, it's because we're not that panicked because we don't have any shares of him. And we also weren't high on him coming into the year, but let's put yourself in the frame of mind of somebody that drafted this guy in the 4th round and is wondering, is he going to get back to top 25 to 30 production?
Your saving grace is he gets dealt to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah. Or to the Cardinals or some team that could use a wide receiver option on their team. But yeah, I think DJ Moore is definitely a prime candidate to maybe get dealt at the deadline. And also too, if he stays on the Bears, is probably going to be a flex play at absolute best.
Call me crazy. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. He's the 4th target on this team out of the bye.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put him over Burden yet. We'll see what the usage looks like, but
that's why I'm not saying that's exactly what it will be. But I'm saying if we went out of the bye week and we saw more Burden usage, we saw more Loveland usage, we saw DJ Moore snaps coincidentally go down. What's stopping the coaching staff from just saying, hey, we didn't invest into DJ Moore. We invested into Luther Burden. We invested into Colson Loveland. We have a young quarterback on a rookie deal. Let's see if we can develop that chemistry with them. What is stopping them from just saying that?
I don't know, man. Who has this is a disgusting question. Who outscores who
the running back
season? Who outscores who rest of the season? Romeo Doubs or DJ Moore?
If Jaden Reed's out for the season, I might actually lean Doubs.
Yeah. I mean, I have DJ Moore one spot ahead, but I think you can make the argument. I mean, Watson coming back to Golden, maybe post by rookie bump. It's possible that Dobbs is just had his best game and he's not really that relevant for the rest of the year, but he's consistently an 18 target share guy. He'll probably have some weeks here and there. I just don't see any appeal of holding DJ Moore rest of the season. He's kind of almost like a roster clogger because you can't drop him, but you also can't get anything for him either.
He had games against the Lions, the Cowboys, and the Vegas Raiders, and he has peaked at 68 receiving yards in the season, and he has topped 50 yards one time.
Yeah, not great. Not great. Even though we believe in Caleb and we think the offense can keep going, I do think we might see a shift towards the 2 rooks this week coming out of the bye. Let's see how much targets and routes Loveland's running. Let's see how many targets and routes Burden is running as well.
I have a solution. Hey, DJ, you're 6 foot, 213 pounds. We cannot run the football. Get ready to learn running back. That's the only solution.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something. I think he's probably going to get dealt if somebody's willing to take on his contract. But the Bears extended him, whatever, after the major Justin Fields season where he had the monster top 12 point per game season. They extended him, so he might not have a tradable contract.
Yeah, I'm just glad I didn't draft them in any spot. I don't have my underdogs.
I checked 1% of my best ball teams. I drafted him. I didn't draft him at all.
Yeah, we can move on to the next player. And as we're making that transition, I'll quickly check what my ownership is on him as well. Because I mean, I hated him more than you do. So I'd be shocked if I had more than that.
Yeah, I only drafted, and when I drafted him, it was he fell 15 spots of ADP too. So if I ever drafted him, it was at a huge discount.
Yeah, like if I see here, I go to my thing, exposure, DJ Moore. We can move on to the next player, by the way, with Jakobi Meyers. But with DJ Moore, I have him at 0.00%. I don't have a single DJ Moore.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, like I said, the only time I ever drafted him was like he fell to the 60s or something. I was like, okay, I guess if I'm going to get a share of him, it should probably be now, kind of thing, because we draft like 200 teams. But Jakobi Meyers is also not been good the last couple of weeks here. He's wide receiver 51 over the last 3 games, wide receiver 34 on the year. And when you contextualize that Brock Bowers has either been playing through an injury or not playing at all the last 3 games, it's kind of concerning for Jakobi Meyers' production here. So if you drafted Jakobi Meyers thinking you were going to get the top 24 receiver that he scored as last season, I think that was probably a bad idea. And I wasn't drafting a lot of Meyers either, for what it's worth. But let's say you drafted him in the 6th round. You're expecting to use him in a PPR league. He's your wide receiver 3. He's your first flex. What is your panic meter on how reliable Jakobi Meyers can be in that role in the context of that kind of situation of a team?
So I clearly like him more than I did DJ Moore, and DJ Moore went 2 rounds above him. So if you selected, like in this scenario, of course, I don't know if he went in round 6 of your league, but round 6, round 7 is usually where Jakobi Meyers went. If DJ Moore's a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, Jakobi Meyers, I'd probably put at about a 5. Like I think if you take the totality of it, wide receiver 34, you probably drafted him at wide receiver 28.
Yeah, probably something around there, I would imagine.
And if that was the expectation, he's underperforming, but you did have the spike weeks, 12 targets or 22 targets in the first 2 games. And you do have the upside that maybe he comes back to being an 8, 9, 10 target per game player. So I'll land on a 5 because ultimately here, Geno Smith doesn't look very good. The Raiders offense as a whole kind of looks like a mess. Yeah, I'm being polite, Raiders fans. He looks like a train wreck.
Yeah, and the Seahawks might be 2 for 2 on deciding when to move off of 35-year-old quarterbacks before the NFL thinks they should, because Sam Darnold literally is PFF's #1 graded quarterback and leads the league in yards per attempt right now.
Leads the league in EPA per play as well, by the way. Shout out Sam Darnold. Him suddenly becoming just an elite quarterback is, I mean, what I would have said Geno Smith, but Geno Smith's no longer that. Like, what's the comparable right now for Sam Darnold?
Geno Smith was good for 10 fucking games. I need to get this off my chest right now. Geno Smith in 2022, when he first got to Seattle, was sick for about 10 games, and he's been fucking garbage ever since then. I am so sick of people thinking Geno Smith is good.
Yeah, hear me out. Is the best comparable for Sam Darnold quite literally if Baker Mayfield played a full season for the Rams before coming to Tampa?
Exactly. That's exactly the best comparable. Baker and Darnold were always talented. They went top 3 in the NFL draft for a reason. Geno Smith, I'm sorry, Raiders fans, but I'm also not sorry because you're going to probably pick very, very high in the NFL draft. What they should do, honestly, is shut fucking Brock Bowers down for the rest of the year, because this team is not good and they're not winning shit with Geno Smith. And what are you going to do? We're going to see Aiden O'Connell starting games in week 9 the way Geno Smith is playing right now.
Wait, so you're saying you don't fuck with the 6 to 9 touchdown and interception ratio right now?
Geno Smith is ass and always has been. There's a cult on Twitter of like, Geno Smith is so good. Look at this throw, guys. He makes bad decisions. He doesn't have mobility, doesn't have arm talent, and people wanted to pretend like he was some savior. He was like, at best, the 22nd best quarterback in the league for like 2 years.
I mean, I disagree with that. I think he was a league average starting quarterback, but I mean, he had an arm. It's just the guy cannot throw it to the right team, and that's the issue. If you can't throw it to the right team, how are you going to throw it to Jakobi Meyers? He's on the right team.
Well, I said it reeks of Jimmy G when they signed him, so that seems like a good like a good call at this point in time. I don't know, man. I just have never gotten the Geno hype. For the first 10 games or so of that 2022 season, first got to Seattle, he looked sick, but after that, it's been a steady decline ever since.
Where do you have your panic level on Jakobi Meyers? Because I said about a 5.
I'm like a 7 or an 8, man, because I think people are relying on him as an every week starter, and I think more often than not, he should be on your bench. He's probably about half the time you'd start him, half the time you wouldn't kind of asset for me.
Yeah, fair enough. He's probably going to be a guy that's always like in that wide receiver 31 to 38 range in my wide receiver rankings moving forward. I did have him higher in these last couple of weeks based off what we saw in weeks 1 and 2, but I think that's kind of evened itself out. And who knows, once we get into week 6 rankings, he's probably going to be like wide receiver 33, but who knows, with bye weeks, maybe higher.
Yeah. Jerry Jeudy's the other guy that we have in this territory. And Jeudy, to me, I actually have him 1 spot ahead of Jakobi Meyers rest of the season. The reason for that is Cedric Tillman basically going to be out for the next couple of weeks. Dylan Gabriel was making his first start. It was in Europe. Jeudy has been bad. Don't get me wrong. He's been really bad the last couple of games, especially wide receiver 76 in points per game since week 2 and wide receiver 61 on the year. but he is still getting a decent amount of volume. So I do think he's a viable half the time you'd start him, half the time you'd sit him, kind of the same way that Jakobi Meyers is for me. Only there's a possibility that these young quarterbacks in Cleveland start to play a little bit better than they've played, because they've played really bad. Like the QB play in Cleveland has been really bad so far. And I think maybe you could make the argument that Geno Smith starts playing better. I think you definitely could. I just think that once Bowers is back, the offense is going to run through him. So for me on Jeudy, I'm like, neither of these guys are interesting, but I don't think either of them are droppable. But I also don't really love either of them either. I would be panicked on both, but like I'm 6 out of 10 for Jeudy, like 8 out of 10 for Meyers.
Yeah. When you're at the range where a part-time Travis Hunter is a threat every week to outscore you as a full-time 90% snap share player, that's probably meaning that you're not too usable in lineups. And Jerry Jeudy, I mean,
I have both of them in my home league. My second flex is between these two players every single week, and I will be starting Travis Hunter this week.
And I think that's the appropriate call because, hey, if you're going to get two limited players, for Jerry Jeudy, it's limited by his overall efficiency. For Travis Hunter, it's limited by his overall snap share. Trust the guy that can actually create big plays. And Jerry Jeudy has not been that guy.
No, unless it's against the Denver Broncos in his career. That's the only time he can do it. But wide receivers we've talked about already. I'm sure people are like, hey, what about Brian Thomas Jr. and Ladd McConkey and those guys that we've talked about? Quick 10 out of 10, or 1 out of 10, sorry, panic meter on Brian Thomas Jr. Again, with the expectations that you had coming into the season, it's got to be a 9 or a 10. But let's say the newfound expectations given a couple weeks ago was like he's going to be a good buy low mid wide receiver 2. Where are you at if people were expecting mid wide receiver 2?
Mid wide receiver 2, probably like a 2 or a 3. There is some risk because he hasn't been consistently playing well. But I do think he played well against the Chiefs. He could have scored a touchdown in that game as well. Trevor Lawrence actually missed a couple downfield throws to both Travis Hunter and BTJ.
Well, that's going to keep happening. Touchdown,
just FYI. Which, absolutely. But, you know, you have the week 8 bye in there. Maybe they figure some stuff out in terms of their passing offensive efficiency. And I think part of it to me was just BTJ playing better. Like, I just needed to see him go out there, win on some routes against man coverage, win on the boundary. And he's able to do that. I mean, 4 catches for 80 yards, 12 PPR points isn't great. But at the same time, seeing him get up to 80 yards, he didn't cross 60 in the first 4 games.
Yeah, and his receiving grade, the last 2 games against the 49ers and against the Chiefs, is the first 2 games that he's been beyond a 60 receiving grade, and he had a 70 receiving grade against the Chiefs there, and 2.35 yards per route run is also a season high for him. So I don't want to say I'm at a 2. I'm definitely not. I'm probably still at like a 4 or 5 on Brian Thomas Jr., but I feel a tiny bit better about him this week as opposed to what I felt about him last week. And I would say the same is probably true for Ladd McConkey, where I feel a tiny bit better about him right now than I did last week, but not like a whole lot better, because McConkey could have had a bigger game because he actually had a punt return touchdown that got called back. I would say that if I was at, again, mid wide receiver 2 was the expectation for both of these guys, give or take, on the newfound expectations we had for them. I would say I'm about at a 4 on McConkey, but a 5 on Thomas. I'm slightly less worried about McConkey than I am on Thomas, but not by much.
Who do you have ranked higher rest of the season?
Rest of the season, I have Ladd McConkey and Brian Thomas literally back-to-back in my rankings, but I do have Brian Thomas at 22 and McConkey at 23.
Okay, so I have BTJ as my wide receiver 18. Sorry, rest of the season. I have Ladd McConkey at wide receiver 24. So I'm a little bit less worried on BTJ. I'm a little bit more worried on McConkey, because with BTJ, it all depends on, will BTJ play better? For Ladd McConkey, it is, can he outproduce Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen?
I guess, but like Hunter to me is going to only get better as the season goes along. And I actually think that McConkey has played so much better than Brian Thomas this year, even though he's had some down games. And
maybe that's where I disagree. I don't think it's that Ladd McConkey's played so well. I just think that we're in a situation now with LA where they will throw to all their wide receivers. Again, I'm not worried in the overall market, because I think the market's more worried than where I am. But I do think with Ladd McConkey, you're looking at more of a low-end wide receiver too, whereas with BTJ, I still think he could be a top 15, 18 wide receiver.
Yeah, again, I mean, McConkey's commanded, at least, other than that Giants game that he played absolutely brutal in, he's commanded 5 receptions in every single game. And he also, in 4 or 5 games, has like basically BTJ's career season high in PFF receiving grade. So like he has, in my opinion, played better than him. It's just, yeah, like Quentin Johnson is there. Keenan Allen is there. Justin Herbert is missing a bunch of starting offensive linemen as well, which is not a great situation. They don't have Amari and Hampton anymore for the next couple of weeks, and the offense is probably going to suffer as a result of that. But I will say, if they're having a hard time moving the ball short, on offense, it's possible that they just uncork a bunch of PPR targets to Lad McConkey. So like I said, I'm worried about him, but I'm not as worried about him as I was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and if we had like a mid wide receiver one expectation for BTJ coming into the year and a low end wide receiver one expectation for McConkey, for me personally, now it's like BTJ mid to low end wide receiver 2 and Lad McConkey low end wide receiver 2 to high end wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I'm both of them are low end wide receiver 2s for me. So I have them a little bit tighter than you do in my rankings. Let's quick rapid fire the QBs and tight ends. Brock Bowers, we kind of touched on the whole Geno of it all and why the situation isn't great. And also the PCL injury sounds like it's like a bone bruise. It could linger, all this kind of stuff. What is your relative panic level on Brock Bowers? Again, I think people should be at about an 8 to 10 if they are expecting a guy who laps the field at the tight end position, because that was the only way Brock Bowers was going to pay off at his price tag, was that he lapped the field at the tight end position, which is why I wasn't drafting him. But Brock Bowers now, what are his expectations? Top 3 tight end?
Yeah, I would buy him low if you're in a winning position, and we're talking low. Like I would probably need to get him for like mid to low end tight end 1 price tags. Like realistically, if you have like Jake Ferguson, George Kittle, guys like that, you may as well just go with them because they're giving you elite production and you're not having to worry about a week to week label. But if it's the cost of like a Sam Laporta type, a Dalton Kincaid type, that type of range, I'd be willing to buy at that. So I would say overall panic level about a 5, because we kind of know at this point the new expectation would be a mid tight end 1 rather than the clear tight end 1 in the game. But I am worried in the sense that a week to week injury for a bone bruise typically isn't something that will age gracefully.
I would not pay Jake Ferguson plus for Brock Bowers right now. If you can get them straight, if you could swap it straight, I think that's fair. But like if somebody
I wouldn't give anybody
like that, wanting like Michael Carter and Jake Ferguson for Brock Bowers, like as crazy as it sounds, I don't think I'm auto accepting that.
I don't think you should either. And in fact, if you got offered Jake Ferguson straight up, I think you should decline. Like that's how involved Jake Ferguson is in his offense. Realistically, the guys that are healthy right now and giving you 16 plus points per game.
Well, Jake Ferguson's the only guy doing that at tight end.
Sorry, 14 plus points per game. More
still the only guy doing that.
12 plus points per game. Sure, we'll go that.
Him and Trey McBride and Warren are the only guys doing that.
Tucker Kraft too.
And Kraft, sorry, yes. And Kraft.
And then Kittle obviously hasn't played, but he had 12.5 and 28% of the snaps when he was healthy. So basically the point that I'm making is the guys that have been that clear-cut tier 1 at tight end, I wouldn't swap straight up for Bowers. But when you're dealing with the range of guys under that, and you have to add, like you said, like a Michael Carter or something like that, that would be the type of move I'd be willing to do. Like if you're looking at your tight ends are Harold Fannin plus Dalton Kincaid and you want to make a move, go ahead.
Yeah, Dalton Kincaid plus would still make me nervous. I know it's probably the right call process-wise to trade for Brock Bowers using that, but Kincaid is the tight end 2 in fantasy right now, man. Like I would be worried if I traded away Dalton Kincaid for Brock Bowers, given the health status that Brock Bowers has, which is, I think this could just end up being a lost season for him by the time we look back on it, man. Like it doesn't look great right now for Bowers.
I don't think that's unreasonable whatsoever. I have Kincaid tight end 8 rest of the season. I have a guy like even if we go down, like, yeah, if it costs Waller plus, Pitts plus, Kelsey plus, Henry plus, sure. Mason Taylor plus, sure. But like once you get up to like the Kittle, Ferguson, Kincaid, even like I said Laporta too. Like Laporta would be a very small plus I'd be willing to do because I do think
I would not get Laporta plus for Brock Bowers.
You wouldn't?
No, he's like in the same range for me as like, you know, the Fergusons and the Crafts and the Warrens. Because the way that J-Mo is playing right now, it's leaving opportunities open for Sam Laporta to play better.
Yeah. I mean, I was given Brock the benefit of the doubt because I do think once he's back, he's going to be a much better option than Laporta. It's just, when's he going to be back fully healthy? That is my big question mark. Because like I said, bone bruises tend to linger. Like, this isn't something that you're worried, okay, no, he sat out, he's fine, now he's ready to go, he's fully healthy. Like, no, like, this is something that even when he gets cleared, like, we saw him trying to play through it and looking like a shell of himself.
Yeah, no, it's a sketchy situation, man. There's a lot of good tight ends out there. Like, it's hard to just say, yeah, it's a slam dunk to go trade for a guy who's currently banged up and on a terrible offense who has a fucking shit quarterback throwing him the football. So it's really hard to go, yeah, I'm going to stop watching the Detroit Lions or Buffalo Bills or Dallas Cowboys offenses in favor of getting this Raiders tight end who has a knee injury.
Sorry, I was joking. Yeah, and that's part of it too. Like, part of the thesis why we were drafting Brock Bowers as the clear tight end one was, I mean, with Geno Smith added, even though he's been horrible, like you assumed, hey, coming into the year, he's got to be an upgrade over Aiden O'Connell. He's got to be an upgrade over what we've seen from the Raiders. And he's just simply turned the ball over, man. He hasn't been a discernible upgrade. He has 6 passing touchdowns in 5 games played. He has 9 passing interceptions in 5 games played. Like, quite simply, how are you going to put up points on offense if your offense is consistently not on the field because he's throwing picks?
And when he does decide to throw it, he throws honey lemons to Trey Tucker and the drive is over. So it's really stupid. I don't know what the hell the Raiders are doing at this point. Quick rapid fire. Kyler, I think both of us could agree, is like basically droppable in a streamable quarterback at this point. Like, he's completely cooked. He has 0 top 15 scoring week. And TJ Hawkinson, same thing, right? Both of these guys are just not even, like, you can roster them. They can be like a second option for you or whatever. But like, I can't imagine that anybody's thinking Kyler and TJ Hawkinson are every week starters.
Call me biased, call me crazy. I don't give a fuck. I would rather have Colson Love the rest of the season than TJ Hawkinson. I sleep like a baby.
Yeah, I have him 1 spot ahead, but I don't think that's an outrageous take whatsoever. Justin Herbert is one that I thought was maybe worth talking about, because after that first game where he looked like he was going to be an MVP candidate, and in the second game he also looked really good as well, he actually only has 1 QB1 finish on the year after that first game against Kansas City. In 4 games, he's only finished as a QB1, and he was QB12 on that specific week with 18.5 points per game on the season. With all these injuries, Hampton, the offensive lineman, are we worried about Justin Herbert being like an every week starter? Because he was looking like an every week starter at quarterback at one point.
Am I worried about Justin Herbert in the sense that I view him as him and Mahomes being that clear, tier 2? The way I've kind of adjusted my rankings now is that I view Allen tier of his own now with the news of Lamar. Like, we don't know, is it going to be 1 week? Is it going to be 2 weeks? I think at this point, face value, you have to take Josh Allen in his own tier. Then at that point afterwards, with Lamar Jackson news, again, assuming he gets fully healthy, the minute he gets back, he will be with Allen. But right now, he's in that tier with Hurts, Daniels, and him. That's how I have it. Quarterbacks 5 to 11 is my next tier. And Herbert is more so on the back end of that, as opposed to the early to mid end back of that, or mid end of that right now. Because when I'm looking at the position, you got Mahomes, you got Caleb, you got Dak Prescott, you got Baker Mayfield, you got Drake May. It's like, there's so many guys playing well to the point where if Herbert hasn't been able to produce as a quarterback 1 in his last 4 games, I don't think you can confidently say he's at the head of that group.
Yeah, no, exactly. I have him in the same tier as like Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Jared Goff, those guys who are producing. And he is my quarterback 10 as of right now, rest of the season, because I do think the pressure and the offensive line injuries are a significant factor for why he's not like an every week starter. Like, that tier for me, like the Caleb, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, I would label them as low end every week starters is how I would kind of call them. It's like they're every week starters, but you'd maybe ideally want somebody a little bit better.
So, and I've actually just segmented another tier, because I honestly think, based off where I have these guys ranked, I would much prefer Drake May, Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Patrick Mahomes right now to the Herbert, Nixon, Goff tier. Just because I look at the week-to-week volatility versus them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I have all of those, except for, every name that you just mentioned, I have ahead of Justin Herbert. I have him at QB 10 right now, behind Dak, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, and then the top 2 guys. So, yeah.
Shout out our Qs, by the way. You could argue quarterbacks 1 and 2 right now in the MVP race.
Yeah, I'm somewhat cautiously pessimistic on Dak Prescott right now, because I don't know why. I'm just like not ready to buy into him being like an MVP candidate. I'm just being stupid, probably, but
which is ridiculous, by the way, because he did it when he was last healthy, and he's been doing it without 80% of his offensive line and wide receiver 1.
I get it. He's QB8 for me right now. I'm still very high on him relatively.
He's quarterback 7 for me. Fantasy wise, I think we're in agreement. It's just real life NFL. The fact that 2 of his 3 picks were off of tips right now, and he's playing with that offensive situation. I don't think any quarterback has a harder situation in the league right now. I really don't.
I'm trying to think if somebody does. It's not important. Either way, yeah, Dak's playing really well, and he's definitely a great fantasy option going forward. But yes, Panic Meter. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Hopefully we gave you some insight. Let us know if we missed anybody. Like, I tweeted it out and I asked people, like, who do you guys want to know about Panic Meter wise? Pretty much every name that we talked about was covered. Some people said Kenneth Walker, which I'm not overly concerned about, but if you were expecting an every week RB1, you should be concerned, because Charbonnet is clearly going to be in a reasonable piece of this offense. A couple people said Chase Brown. We already kind of talked about him 2 weeks ago, and the same kind of applies now. Maybe a little bit of a bump with Joe Flacco coming in. And then the other name that came up was Woody Marks. You panicked about Woody Marks right now relative to what we thought of him last week?
Probably like a 3 out of 4, or 3 out of 4 specifically, because like at least we know Nick Chubb isn't completely obsolete. Like D'Amico still has kind of like that veteran respect, but I do think sooner rather than later, the team's going to look at their options, going to think, hey, listen, like Nick Chubb is giving us 3.3 yards per carry. Sorry, we have to go with the upside. Like, I think eventually that'll happen. It's just I don't know if that's going to happen this week or if that's going to happen a month right now. So hence the 3 or 4.
Woody Marks is about running back 32 or so in our expert rankings. Is that a buy price, a sell price, or a hold price for you?
I would be leaning a hold or a buy at that price. Because I think there's just enough upside to the point where, I mean, if we're looking at running back, I have him as my RB30 rest of the season. I do have him ranked higher than Michael Carter. I do have him ranked higher than Tony Pollard because I think Tajay Spears is going to get more involvement. Again, if you prefer like a DeAndre Swift type go nuts, I would rather the upside of a Woody Marks personally. And then even like I have him in the same tier as Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason split some third down snaps. Jordan Mason, if he's not going to have the full 3 down workload, what's going to look like, especially when Aaron Jones comes back. I just think overall Jordan Mason would be a big loser. So I do view him and Woody Marks, they're back to back in my rankings, as pretty similar.
Yeah, I have him at 31 behind Pollard and Mason as well. So they're very similar in my rankings too. But I just thought that was maybe an interesting discussion because we did see that Woody Marks didn't get the full workload. Like I kind of expected him to get a lot bigger of a workload coming into this week. And maybe it was the game script. I have no idea, but we'll see what happens with him going forward. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Updated rest of season rankings, weekly rankings, all that good stuff available on flockfantasy.com. Make sure to use our trade calculator, our My Teams page. Submit us a question for start sit trade question. We can help you out over there. Definitely check that out if you guys are interested. That'll be linked down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.